Well, good morning to you all. Nice to see you there bright and early, or actually if you've been having a lie-in and you've only come to this video first thing in the afternoon, well, I salute you, because I would like to be getting up first thing in the afternoon as well. But you know me, jokes and japes all the way. But anyway, welcome along to another Jenny Kirk video. We're going to be doing another box opening and review today. And I've got something quite special for you here. This is one of the new Hornby Class 71s. So you can see there the picture on the box artwork. And this is catalogue number R3374. And as you probably all know by now, BR Blue, tops numbered, is really probably my it's my kryptonite in the way that I'm just a sucker for it. Always go for it. A lot of people diss the Banger Blue period, but for me it has to be remembered that some of my earliest memories fall into that period. And when I kind of fell in love with trains, that's what was pootling around on Britain's railways. So, you know, I remember some of this stuff with some fondness, and, you know, I like the colour blue. And also, the Topps numbering system, I have to get this in, it appeals to my OCD. It's neat and it's easy to comprehend, and I like it because of that. Anyway, enough about me. So what we've got here is the newer style Hornby packaging. We've got on the back class history and some of the drawings of the actual locomotive on there. So it was kind of built as part of the modernisation programme, and one of the famous turns for these locomotives was the Golden Arrow Express. This ran on the Third Rail Electric Southern Region electrified lines, and for that BR decided that they needed an electric locomotive. They wanted an all-electric locomotive. It'd be very powerful, which it was. And what they came up with was the Class 71. When they were introduced, they came in a green livery. Later then received the all-over blue. And Hornby have produced a model of this. Now, there is one surviving in the National Railway Museum, and I'm not sure actually whether it was ever at Shildon when we went round there. We'd possibly have a little look, I'm not sure. At some of my previous videos, you have a look through there, you might see it. But certainly, it's an interesting locomotive with an interesting history. In fact, if I turn that around, I can open it up. There we are, this just slides off. I do like these new designs. I don't like polystyrene, so these are actually pretty good. We've got the sort of cushioned cardboard surround, and the locomotive itself pops out there with the instructions and some of the maintenance information. Now, we've seen these in a lot of the reviews, so I'm not going to really dwell on the packaging. So let's see, oh. And we've got a little slipper. This is weird plastic. I'm going to lift that out. And actually, I'm going to show you. It's glued in there. We've got train reporting codes. I don't know how well that's going to show up. I don't want to really break these out from the packaging, because I'm probably not going to apply them myself. And it's probably as well to leave them in there. And then we've also got, I have a feeling, and until I have a good closer look through the packaging, I won't know for certain, but I think these are replacement front skirts, where if you take the couplings out of the NEM pockets, you can then replace them with a proper full-length skirt, which the tension lock couplings, really, you can't have this and then. So it's a good compromise there from Hornby, that those who want to have these, say, in a display cabinet, or have some other way of connecting up couplings for this locomotive, the parts are there for you to use, and actually nicely finished. I can see we've got the yellow, we've got the red on the brake hoses there, and orange on the lamp. So they are nicely finished, even though these are pieces that for 9 out of 10 modelers probably never ever going to actually be applied. Now, first impressions of this locomotive. It is very heavy. It's, even for its size, it does feel like it's a solid piece of metal inside there. Now, we've got the face of the locomotive, in my opinion. It matches pretty well to a lot of the photographs that I've seen. And we've got this very distinctive looking face on the locomotive. The real ones are probably, well, they certainly had a lot in common with locomotives like the Class 73, which was an electro diesel, but obviously ran off the third rail. This was a pure electric locomotive. And as a result, these particular ones, no engine in there. Later on, some of the members of the class, I think around 10 of them, because of diminishing workload for these locomotives, were converted to also become electro diesels similar to the Class 73. They became a Class 74. They lost their overhead pantograph because they didn't need it. And were fitted with, I believe it was something like a Paxman, I want to say Paxman Ventura engine, but I'm probably wrong on that. Certainly the Class 74s were slightly more powerful than the Class 73s, but were a lot less reliable. And a lot of that was down to the way that they were driven and expected to be used, more than having serious flaws with the actual design. But that's not really within the scope of this review. So we've got fully sprung buffers, front and back. We've actually also got reasonably flush glazing in there, separately applied windscreen wipers, and actually the whole cabin there, if you look through the windows, is totally modelled. And actually there's like a corridor behind the cab, and if we look through the cab doors, it's possible to see that even that area has been quite accurately moulded. We've also got these body side windows. Really nice glazing in there, and what we can see through there is a modelled representation of the booster unit that these locomotives had. And what that was that I believe that there was like a huge flywheel that was spun up, and when the locomotive went across the gaps in the third rail, the momentum that was stored in this booster unit enabled the locomotive to usually not get stuck, because obviously if you had to come to a stop in these gaps, how are you going to get going if it's not actually picking up power? So this booster unit just gave that little bit of something that could just get the locomotive back on the move and bridge those gaps. So that is nice to see, even that moulded in there. Now, DJ models went head to head with Hornby with this locomotive. And the Hornby model, again, a bit like the King that we reviewed in an earlier video, got to market first. Now, a lot of people will tell you the DJ model's version of the Class 71 is the Rolls-Royce, and I don't disagree with that. I haven't actually seen one in the flesh, but I have no reason to doubt that that model is not perfect. However, the Hornby model, and for the money that these are available, this particular one, £89 is what it can be got for at the moment. There really is no comparison in terms of the value for money and what is actually a very good representation of the real model. We've got the spoked wheels in there, we've got all-wheel drive, all-wheel pickup. We turn it underneath. We've also got, this is something, when I was test running this, I was very impressed. It can run from the overhead pantograph, and there's a switch here to be able to switch between picking up from the overhead pantograph and picking up off the wheels. Now, in my mind, that's a little bit of a gimmick. But the other switch, that was what really caught my eye. And normally when you run these locomotives, they will automatically display red tail lights at the rear and white lights at the front. Now, if they were running light locomotive, which they didn't really do an awful lot, you wouldn't show the red lights to the rear. And it's always been a little bit of a bugbear with things like the Bachmann Class 25s, Class 85s. There just hasn't been a way to extinguish those rear tail lights unless you were running it on DCC, which I don't, and a lot of people don't. Hornby have very cleverly put a switch in there, and there's a little symbol there, so on that side, running just as a locomotive, that enables your red tail lights. Flick it the other way, little picture of the locomotive pulling a train, and it doesn't show red tail lights to the rear. And that, in my mind, it is something so simple, it leaves me wondering why other locomotives from other manufacturers have not had this function before, and I do hope to see something like that becoming standard, because I think it does add an awful lot to these models. Now the bogies, everything on there, the brake shoes line up with the wheels, the standing pipes line up with the wheels. Everything I see on there is incredibly well put together. We've got NEM couplings in NEM pockets, and we've also got close coupling mechanisms, which are actually very, very similar to the system that's already in place on both Hornby and Bachmann coaches, and it's nice to see them come to some of the locomotives. The only other thing really to talk about here is the pantograph. Now, I've got to work out how this springs up. I did accidentally get it to spring up, but I'm not entirely sure. I do know this pantograph, it is so slender, it looks the part in every way, and it is possible to get it to spring upright. And let's just see, can this be done? There we go. Isn't that brilliant? It's sprung, and it's very slender, and it works. The locomotive can be rigged up to work off the overhead pantograph. Now, the reason that the real locomotives had this weird looking pantograph, you're thinking it's a third rail electric. What does it need with that? Well, the locomotive was originally intended to run trip freights around some of the yards in London. And for obvious safety reasons, in a big yard where you've got members of staff, shunting staff, wandering around, you don't want a live rail at 1500 volts DC, because that is a recipe for disaster. So the idea they came up with was that they would have overhead catenary in these yards that would enable these locomotives to work into the yards, put the pantograph up, and were able to shunt without putting any of the ground staff in any danger. And it's a really quite clever idea. But in later years, as they were no longer used on some of these trip freights, so I believe some of the pantographs were removed, even on the ones that remained as Class 71. I know somebody's going to probably correct me and they go, oh, actually, no, you're wrong. But certainly, this pantograph, there's some immense play value there. You're going to have to be very, very careful with it, mind, because that is just, I mean, it's just so fragile and slender. I mean, I can't believe how on a locomotive in this day and age that they're selling now for £89 from some of the online retailers, how they can actually bring it to market effectively with something as well put together as that. I mean, I remember the pantographs on some of the 1980s models of the Hornby Class 86 or the 92. And they were very gimmicky, they were very chunky, they didn't really look anything other than toy-like. And yet here, you would not call that a toy. That is a model through and through. And the fact that it can pick up power from that, I'm still amazed with it. But you don't want to run it around your layout like that, because it's going to take itself out on any low-lying bridge or gantry. So I'm just going to try and clip that back in, and there it will sit, and it will not cause itself any nuisance. I think that's brilliant. I mean, the Bachmann Class 85 pantograph, it was all right, but I had so much trouble with it just springing up on its own accord. I actually disabled the spring on it, but with this, Hornby have got it just right. There isn't really much else to say about this locomotive. If I turn it round, separately applied handrails, nicely done, not overstated, don't look like separately applied for the sake of it, perfectly to scale. They're actually pretty secure there, they're not going to get broken. We've got this really nice louvre detail on the side there. It's well executed, it's really crisp. And another thing as well, we've got a very, very crisp demarcation between the yellow of the front warning ends and the blue of the rest of the body. The blue is the right colour to my eye, and we've got very crisp tampo printing for the number and the data warning panel and the BR double arrow. So all in all, for what could have turned out as being a very, very simplistic, utilitarian model for something that's actually, for most people, somewhat obscure, I found myself being drawn to this, and I thought, you know what, that is a lovely model, and at that price, it's a bit like the Hornby King that I got and we reviewed in one of the earlier videos. It just pressed all the buttons for me, and I thought, you know what? That is a model which I would like to have. And I've shared my first impressions, the box opening and review, with you, and I hope that some of my thoughts there are useful to you and that you've had a good closer look. Anyway, I hope it's been informative to you. Don't forget to like this video, share it too. And this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying thank you very much for watching my videos on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe and you'll be the first to know about new videos as and when they come up. But until next time, this is me, Jenny Kirk, saying you take very good care of yourself and bye for now.